Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video. This is my first video after New Year, so I hope everybody had a blast. For me, it definitely was, and yeah, hopefully everybody had a happy New Year. And before I start this video, I just want to thank everybody who's been watching my videos recently. I've been getting a lot of views from Brazil, which is where I'm from, and so yeah, I just wanted to say a quick thank you for everybody and say that muito obrigado por todo mundo que está assistindo meus vídeos, compartilhando e comentando, me ajuda demais, vocês não têm ideia. Não só para continuar postando esses vídeos, mas também para fazer eu querer fazer o melhor conteúdo possível para vocês. Então, muito obrigado de coração por todo mundo. Valeu. So that was a quick thank you for everybody, and thank you to all of you guys as well who've been watching, which aren't from Brazil. So to all my English speakers, thank you so much, and I really appreciate everybody who's been watching my videos. Last video I've made got 99 views, which has been my highest view count so far, so I'm really happy about that. And so yeah, big thank you guys. And this is very fitting because it's the final game of the tournament. Basically, I have got a really good score, and if I win this game, I'm in the finals. Basically, that's it. And I'm tied for third place with Rubens Kirita, and if I win this game, I get the spot. If I lose it or draw it, no can do. And if he draws this game also, he doesn't get the spot. So we both need to win this game. So it's a really serious game here, and he's unrated, so I really didn't know what to expect. I did find some of his games online, and I did take a quick look, and I kind of felt like we were going to get into some reverse Grunfeld lines, and yeah, so I did a bit of studying beforehand, and maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. Well, it's hard to say, but let's show how the game goes. So it starts off with knight f3, knight f6, g3, my usual for now, and c5. Okay, just gonna develop my pieces, try and castle really quickly. Here he goes, knight c6. So castles, d5, nothing out of the ordinary. And when he plays this d5 move, I have a small window to play d4 here, and I need to play d4 in order to stop e5. If I play anything else like pawn to c4 instead of d4, then he will most definitely play some pawn e5 ideas, and then that's really going to be annoying for me to deal with because I'm going to have less space. So d4 just secures a bit of the center, and if he does take like he does in the game, then knight takes, and after e5 push now, because now e5 is now available, this is literally a reverse Grunfeld. So usually you'd get this kind of setup here for the black pieces, and then black would be having to take on c6, which would be c3 in the case, but since it's reversed, there's one really important thing you should notice. First of all, notice that black has already committed the knight better to f6, which usually in some Grunfelds you want to avoid. You want to play the knight to e7 in order to play f6 and not lose the knight to the bishop. And in this case, the knight is already on f6, so if he wants to protect the knight, he's gonna either undefend d5 or something else gonna happen. So that's one thing. The second key thing is that since this is a position that you usually get with the black pieces, and I have it with the white pieces, it means I'm up a tempo because white starts the game off first, so white is up a tempo, and now, since I'm up a tempo here in the position which is already good for black, and equalizes when you're down a tempo, imagine when you're up a tempo. So c4 here, striking in the center. This is classic Grunfeld ideas here. So c4, bishop e6 by him, and the idea now is to go queen a4 here for me. And the idea of queen a4 is that his pawn on c6 is not just a backwards pawn, now it's undefended and pinned. So yeah, he has to find a way to defend it, and he plays queen d7, which is correct. And here, this is why I mess up. So up until this point, this was all of my prep. I prepped everything in this line basically, and I was fully prepared. I was super happy and confident, just blitzing out these moves. And this is where it kind of goes, it backfires for me basically. And I'm not sure for what reason. It may be that studying this beforehand got me a bit nervous and insecure about memorizing this line and how it goes. But it may have been that, or it may have been just the fact that I was blitzing out everything and trying to play super confidently. Maybe I messed up the order in that moment. But here I play c takes d5, which is incorrect. The correct move is to play knight c3 here, which is why I prepped. Now, don't get me wrong, c takes d5 is the best engine line, but knight c3 has more attacking value, basically, because now you are threatening to take on d5. And if you play rook c8, I'm pinning your pawn, then you have c takes, queen takes, king takes now is forced. If you take with either the knight or the bishop, then you're going to lose a pawn on d5. So king takes is forced, and now rook d1 is the key move. And after rook d1, it's really not clear how you're going to defend properly that pawn on d5. You usually don't want to push d4 and e4. If you push d4, you're not even threatening my knight. I can just go pawn e3 because your king is in the next ray here. So your pawn is pinned on the d file basically. So everything indicates that this d pawn will fall. And it's a really pleasant position. And if you're playing this position and you're playing a must-win game against an unrated opponent and you're in this position as black, you're really not going to be happy about it because you're playing either for basically a draw or a loss. That's it. You can't really win this position. It's just way too much initiative for white. That is, if white doesn't make a mistake. White could always make a mistake, so I shouldn't get ahead of myself there. Anyways, c takes is wrong, and c takes is correct for him. And I figured that we'd be in the same line here, but now the difference is the king isn't forced to capture, basically. And by the king not capturing, he doesn't really have to worry about his d-pawn that much. So knight c3 is the most natural move, and now the d-pawn is hanging, so knight b6 comes in clutch for him. Knight b6 and the pawn is defended, and he can defend it even more for like rook d8, stuff like that. So yeah, he is pretty safe here. And so there's really not much for white to do except play just the basic moves that you would usually play. So rook d1 comes in, and here he makes a mistake, which is why you should always pay attention to these ideas in the Grunfeld. Here, there was really no need to push this pawn. He plays pawn e4, and all it does is just weaken the dark squares. So I was pretty happy about this. The better move would be to play rook d1 here, just because it's more solid, more developing, and centralizing your pieces, just making everything that more efficient, whereas e4 just maintains the pawn on d5 as a weak pawn. And it even weakens the e4 pawn now, because now it does kind of not make that much sense to push the center without a clear idea. So bishop e3 by me, but bishop e3 is a second mistake which I miss. And again, this is the problem with just playing out natural moves. And it's funny because I said in this position, play natural moves. And it's really the case that this isn't a natural move. So I should have controlled myself a bit more and spent a longer time at this calculation here. I did see the move, but I didn't give it that much value at the time. It was knight b5. And knight b5 is a really good move because you're threatening a check on c7, and you're threatening to either capture his light square bishop or the rook. There's ideas of bishop f4, knight d6 coming in, so something like rook b8, just avoiding the fork. Bishop f4, rook has to come to b7 to defend c7, and yeah, rook ac1, something like this. This looks really unpleasant here for black, really unpleasant, so I was really happy about this. Yeah, so after rook ac1, you've got threats of playing knight to d6 check, bishop takes, and your king can't castle, and I've got two very active rooks. It looks super tough to defend. So this was definitely a miss by me. Okay. Bishop b4 by him. He's preparing to castle and developing his pieces. Knight b5 comes in now, and it's just not as strong. You'll see after castles, I include this a3, just trying to get his bishop a bit further back and maybe start my pawns down the board, because I do have a majority on the queen side. This was always in my mind. I've got two pawns against one, so it makes sense to start the pawns rolling, basically. You need to get them pushing to create a pass pawn, make some meaningful threats, and play that way. He has to go back, of course. The only square which doesn't lose a piece is e7, so he goes to e7. And after this move, I play knight takes a7, which is an equalizing move, but really it's hard to find an alternative, basically. I mean, the engine here gives b3, but I feel b3 weakens my a3 pawn. I can't really play rook ac1. I can, actually, because the knight defends, but what if a6? Okay, there was some more depth to this, which I'm only now seeing, so yeah, maybe b3 was a better move. Anyways, I make a miss. I play knight takes a7. Knight c4 I saw, and I really didn't want to give up my bishop. And for me to play knight takes a7, I had to see this continuation. And this is a good exercise in calculation. So pause the video now, guys, and try and find the best continuation for white. It's not going to be anything crushing or winning. It's just finding the next top engine move. And it's not that hard to see the top engine move. It is pretty natural because you want to make everything as solid as possible. There's two options, basically. You can play bishop d4, which hangs on to the b pawn. It hangs on to the knight. Actually, it doesn't, because of knight takes b2, bishop takes b2, rook takes a7. So that would be incorrect. There is, however, knight c6. And after knight c6, you had to see bishop f6, bishop d4, knight takes b2, and here the critical and final move that you had to see, the second last move, would be bishop takes b6, letting him take your rook, because after knight takes d1, which is a mistake, you now play bishop d4, exclam. Basically, his knight is trapped. You're going to pick up the knight, and you're going to have two pieces for the rook, which is definitely enough compensation, especially considering how weak his dark squares are. Look at all of these weaknesses. All of his pawns are on light squares, so how are you going to defend the dark squares? Yeah, so we reach this position, and he sees that he can't take my bishop. Sorry, he can't take my rook. He takes my bishop. So I successfully doubled his pawns. I have a passed pawn on the a file, which, okay, it's not really that serious to have a passed a pawn, because if we do trade rooks off the board, then that's going to be, if it's just a king and pawn endgame, just an a pawn is a dead draw, so it doesn't mean much in that regard. It does, however, mean a lot if it's like a knight endgame, because the knights can't really access that many squares to attack the pawn. So yeah, there are some chances, but it's nothing spectacular still. So all I need to do now is just save my rook. So rook d4, king g7. Mind you, this is an endgame, so we need to play very precisely here, all of our moves, and a4 is not precise. a4 is what I play in the game. Better would be just to go something like rook b4, knight c4, a4 now, because the pawn's a bit more defended, so I think that would be a bit better. Whereas a4 is a bit imprecise, and it does expose the pawn a bit. We now have rook fc8, and knight b4 is a mistake. Knight b4 is a mistake because I pushed the a pawn too quickly. I had to play knight e7, which is a tough move to find. because it's not really clear what the knight is going to deal from e7, but it is the best move. Something like knight e7, rook d8 defending the d pawn, rook b4 now attacking the knight, knight c4, knight c6 again, and now my knight safely returns over to d4, and this would be the best continuation, which is, again, tough to see, but it had to be found. Knight b4 is just a miss because there is a very simple tactic. So pause the video again. This is black to play and pick up a pawn. And if you find this, congratulations. The move here is rook takes a4. What? How is rook takes a4 correct? Because you cannot take the rook. If you take the rook, then check. Where is it? If you take the rook, then there's just rook c1 check. Bishop has to block to avoid mate, but you don't really avoid mate because bishop h3 comes in. And how do you protect your bishop on f1? You can't, and rook takes f1 is mate. So yeah, rook takes a4 just wins a clean pawn. You'd have to go rook b1, but then rook c4 and we trade some pieces. It gets really good here for black. Black is happy. He's a happy lad. Knight b4, he makes a miss again. Goes rook c5. I was definitely relieved at this. I was definitely relieved because after I played my move, I saw that he can take a4, which is why my next move is so critical. Here I play bishop f1. And to me, this is a great move. This was really creative by me in my mind, and I'm really happy with this move. The idea is that there's no checks anymore. So if you go rook c1, so like let's just say rook takes a4, rook takes a4, rook c1, it doesn't come off check, so I'm still in time to play something like king g2. If he goes bishop h3, then king takes h3, rook takes f2, king g2 again. Yeah, I feel pretty safe. So yeah, he does play rook takes a4, and with this in mind, now I do play takes because he can't go rook c1 with check. He does go rook c1 anyways, which is the best move. And so the question is, what is the threat here for black? Basically, my rook is undefended, so he can capture my rook and go back to equality. And he's threatening bishop h3. So I can't defend the rook, and I can't and stop mate at the same time. I have to choose between the two. And the way I chose is incorrect. My move is also a creative solution, which probably wasn't the best because I do get really low on time because of it. The better move would be to play knight a2, which I saw, but I couldn't decide between knight a2 and my move. He goes now rook a1, which is the best attempt. King g2 was really hard to see. And now the idea is after knight takes a4, rook takes a4, you defend your knight on a2, and for you to push and for you to capture my knight on a2, you have to kind of play d4. But if you play pawn to d4 and attack my knight, then I just go rook takes d4, bishop takes a2, and rook takes e4. And we equal on minor pieces and major pieces, and it's basically just way better for white because I've picked up the two center pawns, and I feel like if someone's playing for a win, it's going to be white in that position. So there was that in the back of my mind. I do, however, play knight takes d5. And knight d5 I really liked because if you try and go bishop h3 now, then there's knight e3, and I defend my bishop on f1, and I'm also threatening to capture on e4. I also have time to move my rook away if he does something else, and I'm blockading the pawn basically. I'm blockading his e pawn from advancing, and that looks really good to me. Knight takes, and now instead of knight e3, I go knight f4, which is also something I saw. the idea of knight f4 is that I'm not just hitting the bishop on e6, I'm also covering the h3 square so that there's no tactics. And yeah, my knight is really well placed here, super well placed. Knight c3 by him. E3 is the start of my downfall, and the reason for this is I'm really under time pressure. Think about it, guys. This is the final game. If I lose this, I'm gone. If I draw this, I'm also gone. I have to play for a win, so I have to be also quick, because if I get too low on time, I'm going to lose it. So e3 just to save a bit of time, but it really wasn't that good. You can see he's also kind of like rearranging his pieces. His ideas trying to get his bishop to f3. And rook d6 is a mistake, because I allow him to get so much play now after bishop d1, and it's really gonna be a tough game for me for here. Bishop a6, bishop f3 check, king h3 is forced, knight d1 threatening the f2 pawn. I can't really defend it, and I played bishop a6 with this position in mind, and I don't know, for some reason I blanked out of my mind, and I was supposed to play king h4 because I had to, was basically forced, otherwise I'm getting mated. And yeah, I just play rook d2 here for some reason. For some reason, in my mind, I could defend this pawn, but I really couldn't. I had seconds on the clock basically at this point, and there was no increment because we were on a analog clock. So yeah, I was really struggling here. And now there's rook c6. You threaten the bishop on a6 and you threaten mate. So guys, unfortunately, we didn't make it this time. We didn't make it to the finals. Just to show you what it would have looked like if I played king h4, knight takes f2. My idea would then be king g5, and I'm threatening this pawn, so we kind of trade pawns in that sense. And even if he picks up an extra pawn, we could still trade down, go into like a king and rook endgame and try and draw it. But bishop g4, bishop b5, rook c5, bishop d7, something like this, getting my pieces attacking the f5 pawn, knight d1 attacking e3, but now knight d5 consolidates, and it looks pretty stable here for white in my eyes. So yeah, this would have been something that I could have looked forward to, just an equal position. I probably wouldn't have won this tournament anyway because it's so close to a draw, but I mean, both of us played really well, I'd say, for the last game. And so yeah, after rook c6, I just play bishop b7, and after rook h6, it's simply made into, I literally have to play knight to h5 and get mated. So yeah, this was really unfortunate, guys, but yeah, it didn't happen this time, but I was pissed. I'm not gonna lie, I was pissed after this game, and basically what I was gonna do was just use that as fuel for my next tournaments and take it from there. Like, okay, it didn't happen this time, but who's to say it's not gonna happen next time? So guys, whenever in life you face these tough situations or something that's really bad for you, know that it's going to get better. It's just a law of life. There's going to be bad times, there's going to be good times, and you just need to weather through the bad times and get to the good times. So yeah, this was definitely a bad time, but you can use those bad times as motivation to do better in the future. And after this tournament, I hit the books, got to studying, and you'll see the result of that in the next sequence of games, which I'll post, which is the next tournament. And just a bit of spoilers, it's a regional tournament, much bigger than the state championship. So yeah, I'll see you guys then. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.